Hey everybody, Al Puglisi Trains. I'm not in Allentown, Pennsylvania, or I'm not in Steeltown, but I'm on Dave Moltrup's incredible HO scale steel mill layout, and it was featured on the channel. So if you go onto my homepage, my YouTube homepage, there's something called playlist. Click on playlist, then it'll take you to my playlist. These are areas of videos, groups. You're going to go to layout visits and click on layout visits, and in layout visits, Dave Moltrup part 1 and part 2. So you can watch videos of Dave's incredible layout. As a matter of fact, it was the first video I ever did that almost broke 100,000 views. So if you haven't seen it, you really need to. It's incredible. But today on this revisit to Dave's, we're going to talk about some of the really big structures he's got. So let me get Dave and let's show them to you. These are some of the bigger structures on his layout. Now, folks, steel modeling often requires really big structures. And, you know, you have to scale them down. They're so big in real life, they wind up getting scaled down oftentimes. And again, please go to the video. If you haven't seen Dave Moltrup, M-O-L-T-U-R-P, Dave Moltrup's video, part 1 and part 2, please do so. But we're going to just talk a little bit about some of the really big structures. Right here. Well, folks, we're going to go get Dave in a minute to start talking a little bit about this one. But yeah, here's something I noticed. You ever drive through Appalachia and see these little air balloons that are on power lines, so that as you drive, or airplanes, you can see there's power lines? And it's just really cool the way Dave did this. Last time I was here, I don't think he had these balloons along the power lines. I just think that's just totally cool.
One of my pet peeves is people...
Dave, say hello. Dave Moltrup.
Hello again. Another time to visit the layout. There's more new stuff.
Yes.
Constantly working, so we'll get a chance to take a look at it, hopefully.
Yeah, tell us about this big building here. That I know we talked about it last time I was here, but we didn't talk much about this big facility.
This is based on my knowledge of the what used to be Bethlehem Steel's heavy forge.
Mm-hmm.
When Bethlehem Steel went bankrupt, the U.S. government decided that they could not afford to lose that heavy forge because it's the only one in the United States, and the Navy uses it a great amount for shipbuilding.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the fact they can do forging. And what they would do is they would take electric arc furnaces,
mm-hmm.
and usually 3 heats of the furnace, in other words, 3 complete runs of the furnace to fill a giant ingot.
Okay.
And after that giant ingot was filled, they had special cars, and there's one right over here.
Ooh, that silver one?
Yes. Those were special cars that were powered by propane gas to keep that giant ingot hot, because if it cooled off quickly, it would crack. And if it cracked, then it was worthless, and they'd have to start all over.
Oh, wow.
So when they would take that giant ingot up to the Bethlehem Steel plant,
mm-hmm.
it would be worked into whatever it is the Navy wanted to build, or other industries for that matter. So they would do the propeller shafts and all kinds of stuff for the big ships.
It's spectacular. And this is, you scratch built this?
Yes. And here's another one of the specialty cars. This is 2 of the cars that I used to work in this area.
Uh-huh.
And the one is an actual direct copy, including the ingot, off of Bethlehem Steel's famous car 112, I believe it was, or do I have, I can't even remember the number. But, and the one behind it is taking some large slabs up to the forge, and that was a copy of a car that was in a Morning Sun book from the steel mill up in Canada.
Wow.
And that was called a high-rise car because the steel sat on those plates that were sticking up vertically, and that was so that it could get cooling air all the way above. Now the 2 giant buildings that are here, that's where we would take the steel from the electric furnace and we would pour it into these large molds.
Okay.
These ingot molds were so large that they weren't portable like standard molds. They would be built into the floor of the building. So now, instead of stripping the mold off the ingot, they would actually lift the ingot up out of the mold. And if you look at this ingot here, they would cast it with lifting lugs on the top.
Okay.
So this thing would be sitting vertically in this hole in the floor, and they would actually lift it out this way.
How much does this weigh?
They would be many tons. They would be 15, 20 tons at least, probably more than that.
Okay.
I'll tell you the truth, I'm not exactly sure. So when you would get it up to the forge, the two ends would be used to hold it in place while they started forging, but the usable part of the ingot was just where the fluted sides are.
Okay.
And the fluted sides were to make it easier to come out of the mold, and it also helped resist cracking.
Right.
Wow. So, but these were giant, very, very large ingots. To this day, a lot of people think Bethlehem Steel is gone, but what used to be Beth Forge is now Lehigh Heavy Forge.
Wow.
So, and it's about 25% of the old Bethlehem plant in Bethlehem, and it's going great guns.
And I told folks from the last visit, I don't think these balloons were here for the airplanes to see the power lines. That looks really cool.
Well, the idea is, number one, it was there to identify the power lines for planes, but for me, it's to let any of my friends that are over doing op sessions so they don't get tangled up in the wires and rip them down, because they were a real pain to put up.
I remember.
I'm hoping nothing happens to
I remember last time, folks, I was here. Dave, you and your brother are both retired fire.
Yes.
Fire.
Yes.
Fire chiefs and fire captains, and
right.
These trucks. These are Sullivan, aren't they?
Well, not all of them. This one I just got. I don't even know where it came from.
Okay.
The ladder truck is a Sylvan Models.
Okay.
And that is an exact model of the first fire truck I ever drove,
wow.
which was a 1948 Seagrave.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a beast to drive. It didn't have power steering. It had a standard shift. It wasn't synchronized.
Right.
All kinds of stuff. But that is exactly the thing I drove first.
We might have talked about this on part one. Now, let me go ahead and pause this. Now, Dave, this is new. Tell us about this thing. What is this?
I just finished this yesterday, as a matter of fact. It's called a door thickener, DORR.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming from what I looked up on the internet that Door was the person that came up with it. It's a water treatment system. The steel mills use tons and tons of water for cooling.
Right.
And so they have to recycle it. So when the water is used for cooling, it's full of a lot of contaminants and dirt and everything else and particles of iron and so on.
Mm-hmm.
What that thing is, and that's very similar to what you'll see in a water treatment system for a city or a town.
Right.
It's just got a sweeping motion that goes inside, and it sweeps the impurities down to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It puts the clean water on the top. It spills over and gets sucked down into the very bottom of the center of that thing and gets pumped back to be used as cooling water again.
Wow.
So this is where the dirty water comes in.
Right.
It goes down into here. It's being churned around, and eventually it'll end up in that centerpiece, and there's a pipe that is the very center of the bottom that'll take it back to the plant.
Oh
in my case, there would actually be 2 or 3 of those to support these 2 blast furnaces. I only have room for 1.
Right.
So
very interesting. Let me pause. I'll go ahead and pause this.
Oh, the conveyors?
Yeah, Dave, I don't think the substation. I don't think that substation was here last time, was it, Dave?
No, not exactly. It's fully wired. I researched what the different things do on the substation.
Okay.
Walters wasn't bad what they put out, but there were a few mistakes in it. But after reading and studying what they do, I've set it up so that it's actually 2 substations in one. Half of it does the town, and the other half is for Moltrup Steel.
My God.
And but it's fully wired correctly, I hope.
Now, what else have you done since we've been here?
Well, we had a rotary dumper before, but you didn't have the conveyors. And when the rotary dumper dumps the cars over, we're bringing in iron ore. You can see there's an empty iron ore train here, and part of my operation is we bring a loaded one in, and it shuttles through the rotary dumper. Unfortunately, mine doesn't actually work.
Okay.
But we still get the train traffic. So from where the iron ore goes in the bottom, it's then picked up by the conveyor, which goes up a steep ramp, and I've walk through some of these conveyors, very similar to this, although mine's a little steeper than the ones I've been in because of space. Then it travels along in a high elevation so that there's room for stuff to pass underneath.
Okay.
And it gets dumped into the ore yard right here.
All right. Oh, down in there. Yeah.
And from there, you know, it's ready to be picked up by the bridge crane and given to the 2 blast furnaces.
All right, Dave, you are you are famous. I can't tell you how many people that saw part 1 and part 2 loved your presentation.
Well, this photo mural that you see here, my wife took from a town right outside of Beaver Falls up on a hill called Patterson Heights. That's where all the people that had money lived.
Okay.
And they have a golf course. And from the golf course, you get this view of what was the Pennsylvania's Fort Wayne line and the rest of Beaver Falls. And down here was the P&LE, which is now CSX.
Okay.
Very busy. Moltrup Steel, the real one, is right there.
Okay.
This one down here is Republic Steel. It's now called Metal Tech. It's still there. And over here was a water tower that to this day still says Republic Steel on it.
Where did you live? Didn't you live
right about there?
Okay, now where you lived there, is that this house here?
This wasn't my house. This was one of my uncles, one of my great uncles, the founder of Moltrup Steel, of which there were 4 brothers. One brother was my great grandfather. This was Stephen Moltrup's house.
Okay.
And we almost bought it. It was for sale for like $25,000 at one time.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm glad we didn't do it because the people that bought it, the renovation they did to bring it back to its former glory cost $430,000.
Oh my God. Is this the one Jeff Grove made?
Yes, this is the one Jeff Grove made for me, and I just changed a lot of it around to make some revisions.
Wow.
I built 3 of them.
Good gracious.
One of them I built for the family that owns it, which I donated, gave it to them. And then I built one for my brother, one for myself. One of the things that made this, and I'm not sure if you can get it or not, there was a 15-foot long mural in the back window.
Oh yeah, I see it.
That was stained glass.
Okay.
And over all those years, and when the building was abandoned for a number of years, it never got broken.
Oh wow.
And the inside is spectacular. And the other thing that made this thing unusual is it looks like a brick house, and you would expect the roof to be heavy timbers and all that, but since Stephen Moltrup, the one who built it and was one of the founders, in fact probably the founder, he built the whole thing out of steel and concrete.
Really? So the brick is steel?
So the brick is brick, but inside there the walls are all concrete.
Oh, goodness.
Which made it particularly difficult when they upgraded the wiring of the house, because you had to chisel channels into the concrete to run new wires and then patch it up. And the roof, I got a chance to go in the attic, and these are steel I-beams that go up the peak of the sides of the roof, up the slope of the dormers to support the roof. But it's all steel beams up in there.
Oh wow. Was the house kind of by itself, or was it near some other houses?
No, it was in an area where they have a lot of very expensive big houses, so the yard isn't that big, but the other houses around there are like that.
Are big.
Now, the mansion that was owned by my great-grandfather is still there, but it became a funeral home.
Oh, wow. Are you thinking of building that?
No, because what I can't find is any pictures of it before it became a funeral home, and it's been so heavily modified I don't think it looks very much like the original place.
What funeral home is it? We're putting it out to the viewers here.
Luton's Funeral Home.
Luton's?
I think it's Luton's.
Yeah. Luton's. And where was it located?
In downtown Beaver Falls.
Downtown Beaver Falls. So if anybody out there has historical photographs of what that funeral home looked like.
It was sold by my great-grandfather's family, I guess after he died in 1956. It was sold to the people that ran the funeral home. And they have since merged with another funeral home, and the building is still there, but now it's run by a food bank.
Oh, goodness.
And so they take care of people that, in need of food and sometimes shelter. They have a couple apartments they can give you on a short-term basis. But if I could find some pictures of what it looked like, but I've checked the Historical Society and I tried to get hold of the funeral home people and they don't have anything.
Okay.
Because I would try to build. I'd probably get Jeff to help me, of course.
Oh, yeah. Well,
But
I'll pause this real quick.
Okay.
All right, Dave, tell us about your dad. He worked for Moltrup Steel, but you gave us a great story.
My dad, and the reason that I don't know as much about Moltrup Steel as I wish, is my dad went to work there at the early part of World War II, or right just before World War II, I guess. My dad never talked about it that much, but he didn't like working in a steel mill. He had a college degree, and he told the rest of the Moltrups that he was going to go out and be a teacher. He was going to teach college. And so after that, we were kind of outs with the rest of the Moltrups because he didn't want to do the steel mill. But my dad's first job as a teacher, or one of his first jobs, I should say, he was teaching Army air pilots about physics. He was a physics instructor. And he was teaching them how the planes fly using physics. And what they should and shouldn't do to keep the plane flying.
That's a really good idea. Now, was this around World War II or Vietnam?
World War II.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad this was 1940.
Okay, when did he stop? When did he stop?
Well, interestingly, my dad went from teaching the Army air pilots at Geneva College in Beaver Falls. He got a job working at Harvard University in their research lab.
Okay.
My dad's boss at Harvard University was a man named Robert Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay, we know all about him.
If that makes if you recognize that name, that was my dad's boss.
Oh, my Lord.
And my brother was born in 1944, so he was an infant when Oppenheimer asked everybody in the physics department at Harvard, including my dad, to go with him to New Mexico to work on a top secret project. And my dad turned him down.
My goodness.
Because he didn't want to leave his wife and my brother, who was an infant at the time. So my dad stayed and didn't go.
What a story. Now, have you seen the movie?
He didn't go.
Have you seen the movie?
Yes, but my dad has unfortunately passed away. I wish very much that I could have watched that movie with my dad. I mean, he didn't get involved in the atomic stuff out in New Mexico, but he certainly knew what Oppenheimer was like, being his boss. So, and I don't know if it was because of the thing with him going to New Mexico, but my dad left Harvard and went to Penn State University and State College and worked in the Navy research lab there. And I lived there when I was 1 and 2 years old before we went back to Beaver Falls. And then eventually my dad got asked to go work at the Navy Department in D.C.
Wow. These stories they're epic.
Well,
they're epic.
One last little thing about my dad.
Yes.
It's not much about railroads. My dad's last project that he worked on for the Navy before he retired was a torpedo for the submarines called the Mark 48 torpedo. And to this day, that is still the same torpedo that they use on all the submarines.
Oh my God.
And my dad was one of the heads. He wasn't the top person on the project, but he was one of the heads.
Wow.
And I'm sure they've made some upgrades to it, but they're still using the Mark 48 torpedo today, which I just think is just really neat that my dad worked on stuff like that.
Oh yeah. When you were telling this story, we paused it, and forgive me if I pause accidentally in the middle of anything, but God, this is incredible. That's a great story. My God.
And my dad would not talk about the family that much. And he was estranged from his real father. So he grew up essentially without a father. And it was all kinds of, typical family stuff. But from back in that day, for divorces and things like that, and single moms and everything, like his mother was, that was very unusual. But, obviously he became successful in spite of it.
Wow. Well, tell us about this big building, since we're doing some big buildings.
This was, and I'll move this. I was very lucky. This was, as far as I know, the last large building that
Dean
Freytag, thank you.
Dean.
At my age, I think of a name, but it won't come out for about 2 minutes. But Dean Freytag built this for me at my request. And it was supposed to be 30 inches long. Dean made it bigger, made it 36, so I had to really cram in a big cliff over here to make things fit with the scenery. But this is a basic oxygen furnace, and the difference in the way they make steel now, starting probably in the middle 60s, I guess, is when these started to become of their own. Before that, steel was made in an open hearth furnace, and we can take a picture of that when you're ready. The open hearth furnace would make a heat of steel in about 12 to 14 hours. In other words, you were taking the molten iron and you were converting it from iron into steel over a period of 12 to 14 hours. And in a basic oxygen furnace, you can do the same thing in about 45 minutes.
Oh, really?
So that's why these became so popular. It's a much faster, and it's actually a more scientific way of doing steel.
Tell people that don't know who Dean Freytag was. I know, I've heard him. He was like the big wig in steel modeling.
Dean Freytag was the person who probably made steel mill modeling what it is today, which is a very popular part of model railroading.
Okay.
A lot of people have steel mill stuff on their layout, and that was because of Dean, and everything Dean made had to be scratch built back then.
Right.
But the Walters steel mill buildings that you can buy today were all designed by Dean Freytag in working with Walters.
Wow.
And so it was amazing what he did. And he never worked for a steel mill. He sold bonds.
So he never worked in a steel mill.
Never worked in a steel mill, but he used to go to the steel mills to sell these bonds, apparently, or some kind of treasury notes or something like that the steel companies would invest in. So, and he lived in central Ohio, which of course was a huge, big steel area. You had Youngstown and all the other places that did steel. Mm-hmm. And Dean would visit these, and he got very interested and confident in how steel mills work, and that's what got him going.
Tell us about this big load here we're looking at.
One of the things I got interested in was transformers. I've seen a couple of videos of these big transformers being transported on the railroads. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that there was a big plant that made transformers in Sharon, Pennsylvania, which is about 20 miles north of Beaver Falls. So my idea was, and they were always complaining that the company, it was Westinghouse. Mm-hmm. Westinghouse was complaining that there were never enough of the heavy-duty flat cars to transport the transformers as fast as they were building them. So in my world, Moltrup Steel went out and got a couple of their own cars,
right,
so that they could jump in on that business. So the orange one is a Moltrup Steel car. It's a 4-truck flat car. It's just made by Walters, except I upgraded the brake equipment.
Okay.
The transformer itself is from Class 1 Model Works. It's beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous. They've come out with 3 different sets of transformers now. Mm-hmm. The other one is actually a Walters transformer, a little more simple.
Are these 3D printed?
They are 3D printed.
Wow.
So.
Wow. And I see a water treatment plant down here, just like the one.
That's a small one, and now that I've started researching a little more, I'm going to upgrade that one with some more equipment than it should have. Oh, but I only had room for this small one. I got that, by the way, in Scotland, which I'm going to go to again next week.
Oh, wow.
And my brother and I have scheduled our trip to Scotland so that there's a Timonium-style train show while we're there.
Right.
And we're going to go to it.
Wow. Well, let me pause this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Dave is going to tell us a funny story. This Shay is new, isn't it, Dave?
The Shay is fairly new.
Okay.
But I did a couple of trips to Cass. And of course, when you go to Cass, you become enamored with Shays. So a lot of people want Shays. And I'm trying to figure how I can use a Shay at a steel mill. So my theory is that the skin flints that run Moltrup Steel found out that they could get a Shay for a scrap price.
Right.
Plus, they thought it'd be fun to have one.
Right.
So they went down to this lumber company that was going out of business, paid scrap price for this Shay. And then they decided, what am I going to do with it? So they use it to shuttle the hot metal cars, which are carrying molten iron.
Right.
I just saw a YouTube video somebody did about a steel mill, and they said that it was carrying molten steel.
Right.
They don't carry molten steel in those cars. It's molten iron.
Okay.
So anyway, so what we do now is when you bring over the hot metal cars from the blast furnaces, we use the Shay to shuttle them in and out to the dump house for the basic oxygen furnace.
How did they get the Shay down here?
They trucked it down. They had a couple of very large trucks. It's a 3-truck Shay.
Right.
And they were able to take the tender part of it, if you want to call it that, and the rear drivers off of it so they could get it on a truck and just bring it down.
Man, that is so cool. All right, let me pause this here.
But I just had to have a Shay. That is.
Oh yeah.
That's a Bachmann Shay.
Right.
Which fortunately still runs okay. You can't get the new gears for them
right
now.
You're very fortunate, because I had two that stripped.
Yeah. Well, Northwest Short Line used to make the gears, and they probably will again, but apparently you can't get them right now because I checked.
Right. Well, folks, if anybody out there knows where we can get, or where Dave can get those gears,
yeah,
let us know in the comments, because we'd like to get a set of gears for this thing.
As a matter of fact, at one time, Northwest Short Line actually would sell you the entire truck. Wow. Already put together, so you didn't have to mount the gears yourself.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So, because doing the gears, I don't think I could do it. You have to have a gear puller and all this.
You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's tricky, and there's a lot of little pieces in there. So, boy, if you could buy the whole truck like that was all done with metal gears,
right?
That would be better. But the other upgrade to this thing was it had a sound system in it that was so-so. Right. And the headlight was so dim you couldn't see it. So
is this a Tsunami 2 sound or wow sound? What is this?
That is a lock sound.
Lock sound, okay.
And my friend who does a lot of my decoder work actually took that and put the new decoder in it, and so it really sounds good. It even has the echo on the whistle. Like when you listen to Cass, you hear that whistle echo off the hills.
Can you hit it real quick, number 8?
Yep. I think I have it right here. Let me see. Oh, there we go.
Wow.
There's the echo.
Wow. Good God. Okay, let me pause this. Dave just got a Q2 from Broadway. This is the new Paragon 4.
And I ordered the
Q2.
S1, which is going to be even as great as that.
God, this thing, the grays in this is not the color that I've seen. Dave, what number is this? What color?
I don't know what you call that color. It's off black, that's for sure.
Right, it's not black, and
one thing that I wanted was... All right, we should have number 1 on.
Does Mainline Hobbies still have these?
He's on. No.
They're sold out.
I got that at Springfield.
Okay.
Here we go.
Folks, if you can grab one of these, they're
Why am I not getting something?
DCC sound, and Dave
I got the wrong thing on here.
That's all right. And next to it, the duplex.
Yes, and next to that
is
the passenger sharks.
Yes.
I always wanted a set of those, but they were expensive, and I managed to come up with a set at the Springfield show for $200.
Oh my gosh.
Unpainted. Didn't have the antennas or anything on them, so I detailed them and painted them in the newer, the final paint scheme they had.
Here's a beautiful little diesel here. This Moltrup steel, blue, cobalt blue. God, what a beautiful. And again, folks, go to my playlist, click on layout visits, and part 1 and part 2 of Dave's layout is in my playlist under layout visits, while Dave tries to figure out how to get this Q woken up. It's because I'm here, Dave. If I wasn't here, if I walk out of the room, it'll run great.
I ran him just before you were here, as a matter of fact, to make sure everything was good. Of course, it's,
All right, Dave got it running. It's going to disappear on us, Dave.
You'll see it again over there. He's going to come over that silver bridge in just a minute.
What silver bridge?
Oh, right.
Okay. Let me go.
By the way, the building behind that is a scratch built building that does takes the ore fines and makes them into something usable in the blast furnace.
Oh wow. This Q2. I remember it's a Paragon 4. Here she goes. Greatness. Blow that whistle. That's okay. What a great scene. This is railroad greatness, folks. Q running on Dave Moltrup's layout.
This is the real one of those specialty cars I was telling you about. I have 4 of them. That I didn't build them, somebody else did.
Wow.
he is passing Beaver River.
Yes.
Over the Beaver River.
Yes. Holy smoke.
That's the best I like doing steam engines with the power.
What a scene looking over this backdrop. Folks, and see how Dave took that real picture of this area and worked it in with his backdrop. Really worked well.
By the way, the top
This
part
clock
of it,
works,
the
folks.
clock blew over the storm in the 70s, and they never repaired it. So the bottom part of the sign is
I hear the
still
cue.
there, although
Oh, here it comes. What a sight, man.
There's another room like
Dave, we're having a field day here of fun. This car here, tell us about this car.
Those were handmade from old steam locomotive tenders by the Birmingham Southern Railway to carry hot steel coils at the Fairfield Steel Works.
Good.
And just to show you how bad things are for the steel industry, Fairfield Steel, which was a huge U.S. steel plant, closed down about 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
And I had a chance to go through there. But these cars are built like battleships. They had 6-axle trucks, heavy fabricated roofs. They were, you can see all the rivets in the side of them. Fortunately, Steel Mill Modeler Supply 3D prints these, and they are dead accurate.
So this is 3D printed.
Yeah. So I have just 2 of them.
Wow.
But you would see when we visited there with the steel mill group, they had a string of about 8 or 10 of them.
Wow.
But they say they use it for slow cooling, so they can put these hot band steel coils in there, and I guess there's a trough inside to put them in, and put that heavy roof on top that's insulated, and it'll let them cool more slowly than if they were just out in the open air.
Let's talk about, we talked about this building on the part 1,
Right.
but it's been a while.
Well, we were talking over there about the BOF that can make a heat of steel in 45 minutes. But up in, starting in the late 20s, early 30s, they started a new process called open hearth. And open hearth steel making was the predominant steel making up until the late 50s, early 60s, when they finally started to come up with the ideas of using the basic oxygen furnace. But what they would do here is, in my building there are 4 furnaces, but a regular steel mill, a big steel mill like Youngstown, they would have maybe 12 to 16 of these furnaces.
Wow.
Because it takes so long, it takes 12 to 14 hours to convert the iron that's in there into steel. And what was interesting, I noticed in the pictures that most of the open hearths had 5 doors across the front. So instead of having a round vessel in there to put the iron, the molten iron in, it's shaped like a bathtub.
Okay.
That has a drain in the middle on the back side. So they would open up usually the center door of the 5. They'd put a spout there, and that's where they would pour the molten iron in. And then each of those doors would be open periodically, and you had little scrap buckets that would be on these small cars. They were usually narrow gauge, but I decided to make mine standard gauge just for convenience sake. And this is the charging machine. The charging machine would pick up those buckets of scrap. They'd open one of those doors, and they would stick that thing through there. It would turn that thing upside down, dump all the scrap out, and bring it back out.
Did you scratch build this charging machine?
Yes.
And this whole building?
Yes.
That's a masterpiece, man. Look at the research, the amount of research that needs to be done. And you scratch built those cars back here.
Yeah, it's not big enough. It should be even bigger than this.
Right.
And this is only half the building. The other side is just as interesting, but I just decided I'd like to do the charging side.
Right.
So on the finished steel side, which was about the same size, so they would open that drain on the supposed bathtub, if you will, that was in the center and the rear, and they opened it with dynamite, as a matter of fact, which was pretty amazing. They had a guy with a stick of dynamite on a long pole.
Okay.
He would stick it into the drain hole, and they had a clay plug in there, and he would set off the dynamite, which would break the clay plug, and the steel would come pouring out.
Wow.
And they had a ladle down below to catch it.
That sounds like a bit of a dangerous job.
if there are some videos out of that being done.
Man.
There's actually a movie called Steel Town
Okay.
that was put out in the 50s that is about two guys that worked in a steel mill, and of course the same girl they both wanted to get with.
Right.
And but it shows a lot of it. It was filmed, I think, at Youngstown. And it's just amazing to see all this. And the movie's pretty hokey, but it really gives you a good idea of how this worked.
Wow.
So,
Well, let me jump over to this other section here.
yeah. But I want you to see, I'll tell you what, let me go in there and I'll move it so you can see the back.
Okay. This is some new stuff that Dave did, folks, since we were here last. This corner building on the left was kit bashed. And Dave, the big building on the right over that's still there, that was
Right.
kit bashed out of what?
That's
Walthers?
5 of the Walters Union Crane and Shovel.
Uh-huh.
And I like to do them so they don't look anything like the original building.
Right.
So I changed the roof line because the original roofs were inset, so I had them overhang.
Okay.
I had to fix this so we had an end that would have the second floor, and it's also twice as long.
And
So
you did all these backdrop buildings over here in a corner.
yeah,
That wasn't here last time we were here.
a lot of them have changed because for various reasons. One of which is I had some backdrop buildings that were printed on cardstock, and there's one there that's still in good shape, but they faded.
Oh, okay.
They almost got to. I looked over one day and you could hardly see anything, so I started replacing most of them with actual three-dimensional buildings.
Okay.
And the building over there with the bridge.
That's new, I
that's-
think.
Yeah. I got that in Scotland. That's one of those British-style cardstock buildings,
Okay.
and it looks pretty darn good from a couple feet away.
Oh, yeah.
And I was trying to figure out where I was going to put that, so I actually made that a little set of almost an inclined area. It looks like the Union Railroad coming through East Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
and it covers one of the tracks.
This is
So
really...
it's like a tunnel.
So, I mean, again, folks, tune in on part 1, but we're going to end the video talking about this little triangular shaped building because
So if you've ever looked in the cheap section, if you go to one of the train shows or something, and they have the old AHM kits, and you can still get it now. They're made by Concord.
right.
They had Uncle Joe's barbershop. They had a funeral home. They had a storefront. They were all the same building,
Okay.
with a couple of differences. This is 4 of Uncle Joe's barbershops.
Okay.
And there was a book put out by a gentleman named Art Curran, who used to work for Model Railroader and put out books on kit bashing.
Wow.
And that's what this is. I followed his directions exactly, and
Yeah.
it came out just the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, I love this. I have a triangular section on my expansion of Pugsburg
I'll loan you the book
that
if you want.
yeah, I need a building just like this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to kit bash something.
This was easy to do.
Yeah, this
Very
looks
easy to do.
this looks very this will fit my hole in Pugsburg perfectly.
Yeah. Now there's another one I'm still haven't got around to building yet, and that uses the downtown hotel that Lifelike came out with.
Okay.
And it's still I forget I guess it might be another Concord, and use 4 of those to make the Flatiron building.
Okay.
Which again is an odd shaped building the way you put it together.
I have a fellow Motor City RR who is 3D printing me skyscrapers, and he can do you
Yeah.
a 30-inch tall. We can
Wow.
get it down to high 20s.
Yeah.
Different, eventually I'm going to have a flat iron in Pugsburg.
Okay.
So if you want a flat iron, we can work with him. And
Let me loan you that book before you go. 'cause
Okay.
I'm not going to build that one for a while. I got too many other things to do.
well,
But and just so you can look through it and get some ideas
yes.
and see what you want.
Well, Dave, I appreciate you letting us come to visit today.
Absolutely.
And let's share this video. Let's get 200,000 views
That'd be
of
good.
Dave. We got to get Dave famous. I want people to come up to you and say, hey, in the next time they see you at the grocery store, hey, you're the steel mill modeler.
I have a friend who lives right up the street, and he and I get together a lot because he's a modeler as well, except he does wargaming,
Okay.
and he did the Alamo, and it's a beautiful model. Whether he's an actual artist, I mean, a real full-time artist. Used to work in New York at the whatever they call the big art museum there.
Mhm.
But his video of the game that they were playing with the Alamo got 200,000 views.
Wow.
And I'd sure like to beat him.
Yes, yes. So folks, check. Let's get the views up on part 1. Go to my playlist, layout visits, Dave Moltrup, and then of course the new visit. And we saw so much cool new stuff that, Dave, I really appreciate it. Thanks for letting me come here.
Absolutely, anytime at all.